Perfectus in Mundo. Chapter 10. Written by Bobo the Hobo. Find Bobo the Hobo on DeviantArt for even more stories. And visit patreon.com/Bobo the Hobo. Pledge at a certain tier to join the exclusive Discord channel, to chat with other Weight Gain story fans, and even the Hobo himself. I've been a real bitch. Haven't I? Aubrey had said it out loud to the empty bedroom. Her voice bounced off of the four walls, plain and uncaring, as she squashed the bed beneath her. The frame had been replaced around the time she'd moved from upstairs. Its heavy metal shape was sturdy enough to hold her extensive weight, but not sturdy enough to keep from whining beneath it. This whole time, living it up in my own perfect world. Aubrey sighed and shifted as much as she could. She was pinned down by her naked mass, even in a seated position. Her huge stomach rolling over either side of her and far down between her legs, her humongous ass plopped on a defeated mattress and spreading like butter over its king-sized throne. Her mother had offered to upgrade the size of her bed, and Aubrey had thought to take the offer. Why not? At the rate she was going to need as much space as possible to grow in. The thought of getting even bigger, becoming so fat that she couldn't walk around, it had excited her. More than anything in the world, she had wanted to become as big as possible, something that had carried over from one reality to the next. If it was attainable, why wouldn't she want to weigh 1,000 pounds? 2,000. Was there even an upper weight limit here? Aubrey had been keen on finding out, until she had seen what living in this perfect world meant for people all over. The kind of people who weren't going to be happy in this kind of reality. People like her sister Riley, who no matter what were always going to want to be in shape. To be skinny and lithe and athletic. The kind of people who would gladly run and exercise and jog. And not be at home with anything that this reality could throw at them. In living in this reality, she was just forcing a whole bunch of people who may have been happy with themselves into bodies, into a lifestyle that made them just as unhappy as she had been back before she'd flipped the coin. In seeing Riley give up on her dreams of ever being skinny, comfort eating through the pile of food that their mother had placed in front of her, all while coming clean to her sister about her desire to lose weight, Aubrey had realized that it had been one thing to have fun and get to live out her dreams of being bigger than big. Being so heavy and fat and having a world that appreciated and encouraged her desires to become even larger had been a dream come true. But she was being selfish, keeping the world like this. Even if nobody knew, even if to them things were as normal as they'd ever been, Aubrey knew what she was doing. And as much as she loved her life here, she couldn't knowingly cause that many people that much heartache. She couldn't do that to Riley. At first, she had toyed with the idea of how she was going to get into the woods. She could barely walk out of her bedroom without getting out of breath. Kara wasn't in any shape to do it either, and neither was her sister. That was foregoing having to explain why she was going to ask them to go into the woods to find a little gold coin that may or may not have been there, which wouldn't have been easy. Thankfully, it had appeared just as suddenly as it had before, on her nightstand when the time was right. It made her feel a bit better about giving up everything that she'd ever wanted, knowing that it had decided to come right when she needed some reassurance, right when she was ready to make the right decision. I'm going to miss all this. Aubrey used one hand to heft up a roll, feeling the immense weight of her stomach as it held heavy in her palm. It was warm and soft. So fun to touch and squeeze. So much of her time in this world had been spent getting to know what it was like to be this titanic beauty queen. But so often she'd just held herself, touched her body, stroked and petted her fat flesh as it hung heavily off of her frame. But thinking of how her sister, in any reality, would react to being such a size, and make no mistake, Riley was well on her way, it somehow made it all seem not worth it. But it's just so long. For a little while, Aubrey said to her belly, I think we'll see each other again. Aubrey smiled sadly and gave her gut a proud pat. It's not like I can't grow another one of you, the right way, I guess you'd call it. Balancing the heavy coin on the nail of her thumb, Aubrey primed the small golden disc to be flipped. With one impossibly thick thumb, stubby and squat from the extra weight, she flicked it as high into the air as she could manage. A low, dull ringing filled the room as all sound seemed to fade out from the world. Aubrey focused hard on that sound as she closed her eyes, held out her palm, and let it land square in the middle of her outstretched hand. Closing her fat fingers over the coin, Aubrey took a hopeful breath into her chest. For what it was worth, Aubrey didn't lose all of the weight she'd packed on during the months she'd spent in her perfect world. Just most of it. When she'd awoken, most of the changes that she'd seen through on the other side of the coin had stuck. She had still moved bedrooms so that now the room upstairs was empty, and she had taken up in the guest room near the kitchen. Her bed was no longer built for bariatric patients, but it was big and cozy. She and her sister had had a heart-to-heart about size, but it had been the other way around. She had finally come clean to Riley about wanting to gain weight, and she hadn't even been there for it. And there was now about 40 extra pounds of padding that stuck to her waist, hips, and thighs.
So you just gave it all up?
Seeing Kara again had been weird at first. Going from best friend to fuck buddies had been a stretch that had taken some getting used to. Hearing all of the naughty things that Kara would tell her while she mounted her was tingling. But at the end of the day, Aubrey had been able to keep those feelings separate. After all, it hadn't really been Kara. I had to. Aubrey shrugged, wolfing down a mouthful of crepe. I couldn't make Riley and a whole bunch of people uncomfortable just because I wanted to be selfish. The spread of food in front of her wasn't anything like the buffet version of the crepe factory that she'd left behind, but it had been larger than anything she would have ordered before all this. Something that would stick to her ribs, extra bacon, lots of eggs and syrup, but not something that was going to make her sick. Without all those hundreds of pounds weighing her down, walking around in this world was like gliding on a cloud. Aubrey could move so much more easily now, at the cost of stumbling a little. Even with the added weight, she was still much lighter and wasn't used to it anymore. Living in a fantasy world was fun for a while, but, what's the point if I don't take anything that I learned back here?
Back here, she says.
Kara rolled her eyes.
Like you haven't been pigging out for months at a time.
She rolled up her hoodie, showing off the bit of belly chub that now rolled over the waistband to her jeans. She pinched it with her skinny fingers, getting a good inch of tummy out of it.
You see what you're doing to me?
She joked.
Hanging out with you is making me so fat, Bree.
You looked pretty cute all chubbed up back there, Aubrey winked salaciously. You had titties, at least.
Yeah, and probably like 3 chins and an ass the size of Charleston.
Kara snorted.
Admit it, you just like fat chicks.
No. You were pretty hot, actually. Aubrey backed away cautiously from the subject. It was still weird seeing Kara skinny again, let alone in a non-sexual context. For months, she'd gotten to know the ins and outs of her friend's body. Well, her body over there. She wasn't sure if Kara and her girlfriend were still dating, or if they'd broken up during the months and months she'd been away in her fantasy land.
God, I wish I could have seen it. It all sounds so weird. What was it like seeing everyone you know like really, really fat?
It was, pretty surreal.
Do you still have the coin?
Kara peeked.
Like, if I flip the coin, would I...
Not unless your perfect world is one where everyone is fat, too. Aubrey cocked an eyebrow, a daring and flirtatious move that was very much out of the ordinary for a shy wallflower like her. Are you trying to tell me something, Kara? The birdie blonde grew flush and flustered at the insinuation. Whether that was a confirmation or rebuttal of Aubrey's teasing, she wasn't sure. But it was pretty cute.
Whatever,
She laughed hoarsely.
I just thought,
It's okay, Kara, I'm teasing you. Aubrey smiled, taking a sip of coffee. But you don't need a magic coin or whatever to make your world perfect. I learned that over there.
Oh, barf. What an Aesop.
Kara gagged.
That was so corny.
Whatever, you dork. Maybe now I won't tell you about what it was like over there.
Oh, come on. Don't be such a meanie.
The two of them laughed together, a long, lilting laugh that went on for just a bit too long. Kara's hand lingered over Aubrey's fingers as they brushed against one another. A palpable silence came between them as the laughter stopped and cheeks grew rosy. Well, Aubrey cleared her throat. Maybe I could tell you more about it. Oh, over dinner?
Yeah? You gonna tease me about how fat I was some more?
I mean, only if you would tease me about how fat I got while I was away. A sudden realization between the two of them, a spark of something new and familiar urged them to break eye contact in embarrassment.
So? Like, it's a date?
Another long pause, but this one punctuated by a hopeful silence. Yeah, it's a date. And from there, Aubrey took the first steps forward into making her own perfect world out of the one that she was given. Without the help of a mysterious coin, Aubrey was left to her own devices, balancing her desire to gain weight, to be big and beautiful and confident, with the way that things were here in their rightful place. It wasn't going to be easy. She'd known that after feeling full and stuffed, seeing the once again judgmental gaze of her mother as she served her daughter's breakfast in the morning, while Riley cheered her on silently from the other end of the table. But for now, dinner was a great first step forward. And for now, that was enough. End of Perfectus in Mundo.